144.
Lovely. Welcome, everyone. We welcome you once more to this session of Roadmap for a Moral Society. It is October 6th, another Monday at 8 p.m. All of you just joining us here today, you are on session 144 of these series that we've started about 3 years ago now. It has been quite a few sessions. We welcome all of you as we discuss the subject, the outward and the inward powers of man. We are sourcing from Some Answered Questions of Abdu'l-Baha. You can find them on the Baha'i Reference Library. Some Answered Questions is a very famous book that relates to questions posed to Abdu'l-Baha and his answers to those questions. They are recorded, and we are so happy to be referring to them because they answer many deep questions, such as the one we have in front of us. One quick disclosure before we start. This is a discussion. We are all in sharing our ideas and sharing our points and sharing our questions, learning from one another. So we welcome your involvement if you're joining us from Zoom. We are happy to have you, of course. However, if you're on YouTube and on Facebook, you're more than welcome to join us on Zoom as well. You can find us on clearwaterbahais.org. By visiting the website, you'll see under activities and events, under that tab, you'll see the 8 p.m. roadmap session for Mondays. With that said, to initiate with the spiritual atmosphere, we welcome an opening prayer. Every session, we start with an opening prayer. Today, we're going to have our volunteer. Prior to starting this live stream, we requested volunteers. We're going to have our volunteer to start with an opening prayer. If you would wish to say an opening prayer, you're more than welcome to join on our Zoom meeting and volunteer. We'll be very grateful to have you pray with us. So our opening prayer, please, and we'll start.
O thou, kind Lord, we are servants of thy threshold, taking shelter at thy holy door. We seek no refuge, save only this strong pillar. Turn nowhere for heaven but unto thy safekeeping. Protect us, bless us, support us, make us such that we shall love thy good pleasure, utter only thy praise, follow only the pathway of truth, that we may become rich enough to dispense with all save thee, and receive our gifts from the sea of thy beneficence, that we may ever strive to exalt thy cause and to spread thy sweet savors far and wide, that we may become oblivious of self and occupied only with thee, and disown all else and be caught up in thee. O thou provider, O thou forgiver, grant us thy grace and loving kindness, thy gifts and thy bestowal, and sustain us that we may attain our goal. Thou art the powerful, the able, the knower, the seer, and verily thou art the generous, and verily thou art the all merciful, and verily thou art the ever forgiving. He to whom repentance is due, he who forgiveth even the most grievous of sins. Abdu'l-Baha.
Thank you very much. We're going to go back to recap last session's outcome. We were discussing common faculty, which is a bridge between the outward sensory devices that we have, like sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch, and the spiritual side or inward, which are imagination, thought, comprehension, and memory. So this faculty, common faculty, is a bridge between these two senses, inner and outer, inward and outward powers of man. Now we need a volunteer to read. Please go ahead.
I'll go ahead and read. For instance, sight, which is one of the outward powers, sees and perceives this flower. It conveys this perception to the inward power of the common faculty. The common faculty transmits it to the power of the imagination, which in turn conceives and forms this image and transmits it to the power of thought. The power of thought reflects upon it, and having apprehended its reality, conveys it to the power of comprehension. The comprehension, once it has understood it, delivers the image of the sensible object to the memory, and the memory preserves it in its repository.
Okay, so here again, an example of how the common faculty would work when you're looking at a flower and the image of that flower basically gets registered, and through this power, this bridge links it to power of imagination. So here, power of imagination, which is in turn conceives and forms this image and transmits it to power of thought. The power of thought reflects upon it, and having comprehended it, reality conveys it to the power of comprehension. The comprehension, once it has understood, it delivers the image of the sensible object to the memory. The memory preserves it in its repository. So again, this is just an example of how these sequences would function. Obviously, in the brain, in the neurological connections within the brain, all these things are happening instantaneously. So when you're looking at a flower, although you may not have seen that specific flower, but in your library, which is your memory, an image which resembles a flower is stored. So this new image, obviously, you go through that process of identifying and connecting it through these powers, that comprehending this is a flower, and then eventually you would store it in your image store. So a storage system, basically. So it's a fairly simple way to show that those sequences of event that occurs from outer powers of 5 outer powers to the 4 inner powers, generally, through this bridge, basically. Any comments, concern on this?
Yeah, it's just like, it just kind of reminds me of some of the things I read in psychology, how, I mean, our emotions are tied directly to, I guess, what our thoughts and senses. And if we had a positive experience, we have positive emotions. Yet if we have like negative experiences, then the negative images that we survived probably would have a great effect on our emotions. And it's, I guess through prayer and meditation, it's just like we learn how to sort out these emotions of life, so to speak.
Right. Any other comments? Okay. Now, someone wants to read the last slide for this segment?
Sure, I can read again.
Go ahead.
The outward powers are 5. The power of sight, of hearing, of taste, of smell, and of touch. The inward powers are also 5. The common faculty, and the powers of imagination, thought, comprehension, and memory.
Yeah, this really concludes this segment related to how our brain functions. And this inner power is not linked directly to basically the physical brain. The question really becomes of, and they have, interestingly, they did many studies, people that get strokes or use certain areas of the brain gets damaged. The brain has a power of rewiring itself to use other portion of the brain to perform the same functions, which is very intriguing. So, so this shows that these powers are not really directly linked to a physical area of the brain, but it's a power that uses the brain to manifest itself. So that's, again, the summation of what we read completely last session. Any comments on this?
Yes, Gilbert. Just reflecting in terms of the relationship between the soul and the body, and free will volition, you know, the affective parts of that, and also feeling, intuition, and motivation. There are just another part, you know, like you're saying that the brain's like the machine, so to speak, and the soul or the spirit has these other powers that enable, you know, volition, like free will, volition, feeling, intuition, and motivation, and that sphere as well. I just think that imagination, you know, can include things like intuition. Just another part of that, that's all. Thank you.
Sure, sure. But remember, one of the major aspects to show that directly outer sensor are not the only input to your brain. And during the sleep, you actually traverse and see things as real as it can be, where there is no material sensor that you have that detected those. So people see event that occurred and replay the event that occurred in the past, or they sometimes see events that will occur in the future. So the question is that if purely brain was this repository of the experiences that you have, then something within your frame of cognizant soul that recreate events that didn't happen. So your brain actually regurgitates the events that you have during the day and plays different scenarios to heal itself. So that's how during the sleep, because this is the events that occur that may be detrimental to your well-being, and it creates a stress that causes brain to be under duress. So the way that brain deals with this is that it creates scenarios that possibly can come out of the event that occurred that day that ultimately may not end up being any damage, or your car has been in an accident and you're stressed because you don't know how to repair it. So what ends up happening during the sleep? So, well, if I cannot repair it, maybe I can go after insurance and collect from it. Or I can go and borrow money and pay for it. So your brain starts to examine the events that occurred during the day and create a possible resolution to the conflict that stressed you out during the day. So a lot of the dreams that we encounter relates to events that you basically may have done something that caused harm to yourself or to your property, but at the end you say, well, it's just money and I can recoup from it very easily. Now, obviously, some events during the day that people cannot reconcile, and that's why the following day they behave irrationally, because they couldn't really resolve internally through their brain of the ultimate damage is not large enough for you to worry about it. But this creation of the variation of the scenarios that could solve the problem is coming from someplace, because those imagination doesn't exist in the brain. You are actually assembling scenarios that would be able to address the problem that you were facing during the day. So this is really very intriguing from that perspective of showing that there is not a segment of the area of the brain that is really relates to this event that occurred during the sleep. Similarly, sometimes you see events that will occur in the future. And it's like deja vu, that you've seen this and suddenly you recall that this event you predicted. You know, what would happen if I buy a boat and the boat would have a problem inside a storm and it capsized. Then during this process, you have imagined that, well, even if that happens, it's a financial loss. And you see, I'm healthy and happy, so that doesn't impact me much. So that's how the brain repairs itself, that to deals with anomalies that occur during the day that puts the mind into stress. But many people that don't do this process, then they behave irrationally because they cannot resolve this conflict within their own brain. So the reason I'm mentioning this is relates to this issue of separation of the inward power from the physical brain that exists. So this power of imagination is not is a physical area of the brain that creating that imagination.
And Gilbert, could I just say to you that science has come a long way, and in the writings we cautioned in regards to the dream state itself, because what you've just described are some of the bad dreams, you know, some of the worry dreams, and you also described effectively dreams that you have of events that you dream of 10 years previously and then they come about. And we're told that if in the writings, and you can research it for yourself, that if we use that faculty, the dream state, appropriately, not vain imaginings and so on, it can't be kind of put in concrete. But there is a lot of research going on in Australia. There are Baha'i researchers looking into this from a scientific and working together across Australia and America, because what they've discovered is that people with schizophrenia, in actual fact, part of their psychosis is created because they're not able to have REM sleep. They're not actually sleeping. They look like they're sleeping, but they're not in the state of deep sleep. So therefore, a part of the triggers for their psychosis is because they are not, you know, if we don't sleep for 10 days, we're going to get into quite a mess. But my point is this: the dream and the dream state increasingly over time can become a means of another sort of meditative, qualitative, spiritual life that can inform us, if we use it safely and correctly, in order to make better decisions. And I just wanted to point that out. I mean, I haven't got 5 hours to get into the, the details of it clinically, but it is very important for Baha'is to actually look at that as part of another tool, if you will, to enable them to make decisions in this life that are going to benefit themselves and others. I just thought I'd like to point that out because it is a very groundbreaking new area of research for people both of, who are Baha'is and who are in clinical studies around that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Obviously, my knowledge about this subject is quite limited in terms of dreams, but this is what I read from psychological books related to human behavior. But of course, my information is not up to date.
Thank you, Gilbert. But isn't it wonderful? I mean, we have another tool that we have been given in the writings to utilize, and now science is leading the way in understanding more about it. So thank you very much. I just wanted the friends here to be very aware of it, because as a tool, and if it's used properly, not vain imaginings, it can help us, along with prayer and so on, to have very effective lives. So thank you.
Sure. Okay, we're going to start another segment, which is the differences in human character. It's a very interesting subject. All right, somebody wants to read this?
I can start.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
You sure?
Yes, go ahead.
Question. How many kinds of character... Wait a minute. Gotta move something around. All right. Question. How many kinds of character are there in men, and what are the causes of the differences and variations among them? Answer. There are innate character, the inherited character, and the acquired character, which is gained through education.
Okay, so these are the three that we're trying to explain and go to more detail into each of these and see how influences one's behavior in the normal society.
Okay, want me to continue?
Yeah, please.
As to the innate character, although the innate nature bestowed by God upon man is purely good, yet that character differs among men according to the degrees they occupy. All degrees are good, but some are more so than others. Thus, every human being possesses intelligence and capacity, but intelligence, capacity, and aptitude differ from person to person. This is self-evident.
Right, so it's fairly obvious man was made in the image of God, and we have access to all the attributes of God. But here, the reality of it is that the character of a particular person relates to degrees of capacity they have to many different degrees of intelligence. So the question is that intelligence, capacity, and aptitude are different from people. And someone is very good at math, and someone is not. Someone is artistic, and someone is not. So these are really key elements which really differentiates as far as innate characters. So the degree of these innate characters differs from human to human. That's why we have so many variations of it. Any comments, questions on this?
Well, this kind of reminds me of my childhood because I remember growing up, my teachers thought that I was, I guess back then they thought I was mentally retarded because I wasn't doing good academically. And they had me tested when I was about 8 years old at the psychiatrist's office in Indianapolis. And then, they went through a battery of tests, and then they discovered that I had an IQ in the upper 1/10 of 1 percentile, which kind of shocked everybody. So apparently I was bored to death with what they were trying to teach me because it seems to me I already knew that. But
Exactly.
That's just me.
No, of course, of course. Any other comments?
Yes, Gilbert. As to the innate character bestowed by God, in actual fact, the acquisition of virtues through this innate character can actually inform intelligence and capacity and aptitude in terms of facing challenges, life. Because if a person is trustworthy, acquires these attributes of God, like trustworthiness, honesty, kindness, empathy, which is a hateful word in society at the moment, but because people just don't want to do the work to acquire that. Those attributes from the innate character can inform. It doesn't give you in terms of we all have different intelligences and capacities. Some are thimbleful, some are river, some are cup, so on. However, all of us can access the virtues bestowed upon us through acquiring, through our innate nature bestowed upon us by a creator. We can actually work at those gifts, get to know ourselves, and actually work on those to inform the other parts of our life that vary in degree and capacity, because each of us are unique, actually unique, and have different capacities, and that's a very wonderful thing. So my point in saying this is that there is that particular thing that each person on this planet is given I would say a predominant attribute or a predominant part of their innate nature is very unique. And if that is trained, it can inform all the other parts to a certain degree, is my point. Thank you.
Sure. So here again is the question of degrees, but the basis, availability of these character elements is there for everyone. And later on we will read that majority of behavior of human or human character is through acquired knowledge, whether good or bad. So you can have a pure soul with these characteristics of intelligence, capacity, and aptitude, and through wrong education can go astray. Where the same person in a nurturing environment would achieve its potential or his potential. So let's take an example.
For example, take a number of children from the, wait a minute, I'll move this. For example, take a number of children from the same place and family, attending the same school and instructed by the same teacher, raised on the same food and in the same climate, wearing the same clothing and studying the same lessons. It is certain that among these children, some will become skilled in the arts, sciences, some will become average ability, and some will be dull. It is therefore clear that in man's innate nature, there is a difference in degree, aptitude, and capacity. But it is not a matter of good or evil. It is merely a difference of degree. One occupies the highest degree, another the middle degree, and yet another the lowest degree. Thus man, the animal, the plant, and the mineral all exist. But the existence of these four kinds of beings is different. Indeed, what a difference there is between the existence of man and that of the animal. Yet all these do exist. It is evident that in existence there are differences of degree.
Right. So here we're discussing the same children going through the same environments would have or would develop different characteristics. So here is an example of these characteristics that are all good. As you see, there are three images that is displayed in the background. So here you have different children with different capabilities. So you have this aptitude of a person, you have skills that that particular person acquires. So there is a degree to these three types of characteristics of the children. So one occupies highest degree, another the middle degree, and yet another lowest degree. So so these skills, aptitude, and now comparing this to level of existence as a whole, you see in the plant you have a spirit of growth. In the animals you have spirit of senses, and of course in humans you have exploded the characteristics of cognitive capability that doesn't exist. So you see that different degrees in different even species and different live biological element within the world. So the same difference exists in degrees in humans as well. So that's really the correlating creation in the world to differentiation between people that have different capacities generally.
Mm.
Any comments?
Yes, Gilbert, just a reflection. And thank you very much for giving the differentiation, particularly in any other kingdom except the human kingdom. Plants, animals, and so on are of varying degrees. So are human beings. But I would like to suggest that over and above all of this, that's why it's a very good argument for the collective. It's a very good argument for the collective, because if you have a group of children who are from the same place, same family, attending the same school, instructed by the same teacher, and you look at them individually and their capacities vary. But if you put them together in a collective, it raises the least of them to the level of the highest capacity shared among them. So my reflection is around collectivity, and in terms of looking at it from, the individual child within that environment, and looking at the power of that collective of those varying capacities, if they were to coordinate those varying capacities to attain some goal. I just wanted to reflect that and point it out, because I think this is very important to look at the stratification of our human kingdom and the world we live in. But I also can't look at that without realizing that what if all of that and those varying capacities were from, I guess it's my Indigenous lens, but it's looking at the individual parts and the sum total of the lowest part of that and the highest, and in terms of the power of the coordination and cohesion of a collective. So that's just a reflection. Thank you.
Sure. Basically here we're talking about those three characteristics: is intelligence, capacity, and aptitude. So these are the three segments of character, innate character that exists in every human being. But interestingly, they've done studies with twins, and even twins that are exactly look-alike. And one actually achieved very high degrees of education and had a PhD, and the other one lived a normal life. Ironically, the one that was highly educated went astray and caused enormous harm to themselves, where the one that was actually not very bright compared to the other sibling lived a normal life and didn't cause any harm. So it really shows that even to a degree where even from a genetically they're identical, these three powers that we were talking about exist in different degrees, and through education, especially spiritual education, is the one that forms the character of the person, not just material sciences. Any comments, other comments on this? Okay, so here. So now we're going to go to inherited character. So we examine the innate characteristics of those three components. Now we're describing the inherited one.
I'll go ahead and continue, I guess.
Okay.
As to differences in inherited character, they arise from the strength and weaknesses of man's constitution. That is, if the parents are of weak constitution, then the children will be likewise. And if they are strong, then the children will also be robust. Moreover, the excellence of the bloodline exerts a major influence, for the goodly seed is like the superior stock that exists. Likewise, among plants and animals, for example, you see that children born of a weak and sickly mother and father will naturally have weak constitutions and nerves, will lack patience, endurance, resolution, and perseverance, and will be impulsive, for they have inherited the weakness and frailty of their parents.
So here again, it's a very good example in terms of the genetically disposition you have from your parents in terms of inheriting their characteristics. And you see through genomics, we can see that there are certain diseases, for example, that is passed from parents to the children, and some mutated gene that exists in a family, especially areas where there are marriages that occur within the family. And that's why the Abdu'l-Baha mentions that you have to marry as distant as possible to your own family or to your own kin. So reality of it, that the inherited characteristics is a particular limitation or constitution that we inherit from our parents. And this is programmed into the DNA of each individual. And of course, combination of the RNA of a father and a mother creates normally when a child gets born, it inherits the best of the both worlds when it's born. So from that perspective, usually the dominant gene within the children becomes the more assertive. So the children normally became stronger than each of their parents in general. But this limitation already exists in terms of inheritance from the family. For example, you have people that have shorter lifespan because of their genetic makeup. And they have, for example, history of certain diseases that gets carried through the children. And of course, environment has the impact as well. Many of the cancers that, for example, we see diseases today is outcome of exposure of our bodies to chemicals that float everywhere, and we touch that intrinsically it penetrates our cells and mutates or creates abnormality in our genes. So here again, the example was brought in that from people that physically they're not very tall children will not come out of it. If you have two average height people that marry. So this is really a limitation which is inherited generally, which normally deals with a strength of your organs and constitution of your body in general. Any comments on this?
I guess this is going back to the nurture versus nature argument that you hear in biology. It's just like, okay, is it the nature of a person to do this or that, or is it because of how they were nurtured? I mean, it's just, in my family, we have a couple of musicians, and I'm the only one that has, I guess, the capacity for advanced science and all that. And I just thought that was rather interesting. Some people put that out there, but that's just a comment.
No, of course. Yeah, those are variations of degree in terms of those three characteristics of a person's character. Any other comments?
Just a reflection, actually. I think that along with getting to know the person you may marry, looking at this, you'd really want medical certificates from both sides of the family before you contemplate having a child. And because, most people marry because they find somebody that they love or love, and they don't do, I mean, down the track, they can, in terms of their genetics and so on, they can come up with some pretty horrendous battles, really, because they're unaware of the, of what characteristics their intended partner has. So, I mean, it's just kind of like saying to me, well, in another life, in a different time, I perhaps would ask for a medical certificate before I considered, creating a family, because, looking at this and the unfortunateness of it, the way that, your genealogy and everything affects how you're going to navigate this physical realm, I mean, in terms of body and so on. So I think, I think that calling up for a medical certificate might be a very good idea to prevent suffering to other people, so to speak. Just a reflection, Thank you.
Of course. But we know, for example, majority of inherited diseases is in the Middle East area because of their culture of intermarrying within their own family. like cousins getting married or an uncle marrying a niece. This type of culture existed. And that's why you have a highest degree of these kind of inherited diseases in the Middle East area,
You
within
talk,
Jewish community as well as Islamic areas, because of that culture. And normally it was designed in such a way that some of it relate to the cultures from perspective of, for example, a man's which had a family would die. Within the family, the eldest son would marry the wife of his brother that passed away. So there were a lot of this type of environment that occurred, or cousins getting married, or the uncle marrying the niece, and this kind of environment created a enormous amount of inherited diseases, which, as Abdu'l-Baha mentions, that you should not marry within your own family. The farthest you go, the better offspring you would have, which now is proven in the genetics sciences.
And also, Gilbert, too, incest is from time immemorial. There's always been a prohibition around incest, and it isn't just the Middle East. In some royalty in European countries, cousins have married cousins in terms of for the sake of inheritance. And in the East, it was because there was so much killing and wars that if the wife of someone was killed, well, they just pick that up. And that's why incest was so kind of predominant back then, because that was a custom. It was customary. And that custom actually gave rise to far more incest and more disease, is my point. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, of course. Okay, any other comments? Here is another example.
Aside from this, certain families and lineages have been singled out for a special blessing. Thus, the descendants of Abraham received the special blessing that all the prophets of the house of Israel were raised upon amongst their ranks. This is a blessing that God bestowed upon that lineage. Moses, through both his father and his mother; Christ, through his mother; Muhammad, the Bab, and all the prophets and holy ones of Israel belong to that lineage. Baha'u'llah, too, is of a lineal descendant of Abraham, for Abraham had other sons besides Ishmael and Isaac, who in those days emigrated to the regions of Persia and Afghanistan, and the Blessed Beauty is one of their descendants.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you see that these are genetically, I guess God promised Abraham that his offspring would create these Abrahamic religions that lasted for thousands of years. So we see from Adam to Abraham, and then Abraham to Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, and Bab and Baha'u'llah. They're all lineage of that promise that God gave Abraham. So it looks like there are lineages in terms of, so far, within the Abrahamic religion, that God chose offsprings of Abraham to use as manifestation of his will. Any comments on this?
Oh, yes, of course. In one sense, these trees of lineage that have been protected from things like incest and so on have been kept in a form where the manifestation of, freedom from plagues of incestual kind of behaviors have been kept in pure lineages in order to be able to manifest divine educators. So that's a very interesting quotation in terms of not only how that was preserved, so that from that lineage it could produce manifestations and so on. Just a reflection. Very interesting.
Sure. Any other comments? So overall, there are some families that are blessed in terms of lineages of being part of the revelation of God. So the progressive revelation apparently is coming from the same pool of genes initiated from Abraham.
And Gilbert, just to add to that, the same seed, because don't forget, they would have had prior knowledge, intellectually. They would have had wisdom that perhaps other people of other lineages didn't have, like they didn't ask for a genealogy test before they married, but these holy souls would have had some kind of prior knowledge and kept their lineage pure. That's my point. Thank you.
Of course, when you're dealing with Muslims and Jews, which obviously Christ came from the Jewish area, they were both descendant children of Abraham from different wives that he had. So they were cousins, and ironically, they still have skirmishes today. But they're from the same family. Okay. So we need another volunteer to read this.
I can read.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hence, it is evident that inherited character also exists to such a degree that if one's character does not conform to that of one's forebearers, one would not be accounted among that lineage in spirit, even if one were even if one were a descendant in that body. Such is the case of Canaan, who is not reckoned among the descendants of Noah. Noah's curse was not a judgment on Ham or Canaan for Ham's actions, but a prophecy about the future wickedness of the Canaanites.
Right. So here, as you see, there is a lineage of genetic lineage, which obviously some may go astray, but there is a spiritual lineage as well. So in case of Noah, which his son was Ham, and his son was Canaan, obviously, apparently, he saw Noah in a bad situation when they were drunk, and spread that information. And that's why Noah cursed him, because he knew that the Canaan's descendant would cause problems of his behavior of spreading the knowledge he had that would damage the lineage. So again, it's saying that they say that Canaan is not a spiritual lineage of Noah. And that's really what they're trying to emphasize here. So you have a physical lineages, which is through marriage, and then you have a spiritual lineage, which you defy the norm of the your spiritual predecessor, which your behavior would transmit to your children, and they would cause harm generally. Okay, any comments on this? But it's very interesting that the Noah's curse would predict that with the Canaanites divulging that information, his descendant would be going astray. So he was forewarning people to not follow the Canaanite.
And Gilbert, just taking up the story part of it, because I don't know the background of this, you know, the actual facts for myself, but it looks to me like way back then that backbiting actually has a result. It has a particular punishment of its own, you know. If I take to be that someone saw someone drunk and then went and told everybody about it, and then, you know, I mean, I may have the wrong end of your story, but to me, it rang a bell in my mind and being about why, you know, backbiting is so prohibited in this current day, and perhaps, you know, it's a very bad thing, because it can, you know, it can create division, is my point. Just a reflection and a thought.
Yeah, of course, of course. Any other comments?
I have a question about the concept. So we were speaking about this idea of spiritual heritage, that your heritage isn't just a matter of passing on your biological genes, but also the behaviors and the values that they have, that they transmit, if you will, to their future generations or choose not to. Is that correct?
Correct, but if inheritance is good and transmitting that inheritance from perspective of the genetic doesn't guarantee that they follow the same spiritual capacity that the parents have. So this particular action of Canaan was a sign that he was moving away from the doctrine of the Noah. So he violated that trust, and that's why Noah was forewarning not to trust descendants of Canaanites, basically. So this doesn't mean if son of a preacher becomes a good person. That's the bottom line. All right. Next.
All right.
Go ahead.
As to the differences of character arising from education, they are great indeed, for education exerts an enormous influence. Through education, the ignorant become learned, the cowardly become courageous, the crooked branch becomes straight, the acrid and bitter fruit of the mountains and woods becomes sweet and succulent, and the five-petaled flower puts forth 100 petals. Through education, barbarous nations become civilized, and even animals take on human-like manners. Education must be accorded the greatest importance, for just as diseases are highly communicable in the world of bodies, so is character highly communicable in the realm of hearts and spirits. The differences caused by education are enormous and exert a major influence.
Right, so this is really clearly visible because all innate characteristics are good to certain degrees that manifest in different people, but the major lever that moves a person from where they are to do good or to do evil is education. So in the case of Canaan, we saw that even though he was from the lineage of Noah, but he went astray, violating the trust that Noah had. So this question of education and comprehension of, we can see this example very easily during the dispensation of Muhammad, where culture at that time was barbaric, and it was obviously more toward material aspects of life, that the even families, because they had limited resources in Sahara, they couldn't feed all their children, so they would even bury their girls alive because they couldn't carry them or take care of them. So when Muhammad came in, all these actions, sacrifices, and slavery that were going on at the time stopped through education. And as Baha'u'llah mentions, that manifestations show up where there is most corrupt, most backward society on earth exists. Manifestations come through those areas to show that if their word can change such a backward culture, then it would be destined to conquer the world. And it can educate people that are more civilized than they were. And same thing happened in Iran in the annals of the Shiite degradation in Iran, where Bab made himself manifest. There was most corrupt, and the clergy, and if you read Iran, it would show you that learned people were the cause of discourse and harm to the society, and was using people as zombies and their agents to do mal in the society. So they corrupted the judicial system, educational systems, even political systems at the time, where Bob appeared, and of course later on Baha'u'llah, to reform that the most backward society on earth in mid-1800s. And it's amazing to see even the mid-1800s, the slavery was common basically between Muslims. You know, Sunnis from north, Turkmens were attacking Shiites in the Khorasan area, and they were taking them as slaves and selling them. Where European at that time, in mid-1800, already abolished slavery, and they were trying to eradicate it in the areas that they were colonizing. Of course, they committed a lot of atrocities as well. But this issue regarding true education, when you're looking at Muhammad's doctrine, how it turned savages into zenith of the golden age of civilization from 6th century to 11th century, that was golden age of Islamic civilization. But of course, it took a turn at that time because Imam Ghazali tried to enforce doctrine of orthodoxy, that no one needs anything except the laws of God, and no leaf would fall from a tree except with the will of God. And we don't need anything else, and all the knowledge necessary for humanity already exists in the revelation of Muhammad. And from that process, and of course, the Islamic doctrine started to branch out to multiple sects that differed greatly from each other. And of course, they branched off from the Sunni, which is today majority of Muslims. And that's the reason Bob appeared, is because of the atrocities that were happened in the hands of the Muslims to themselves. And the corruption that existed in the ecclesiastical system that they created in general. So here again, this difference in education is enormous, because we can see it, that savages or cultures, sub-Saharan cultures that were quite primitive, turned within less than 500 years, it turned into the most advanced civilization, Islamic civilization. And of course, it deteriorated after that. So again, it says, through education, the ignorant become learned, the cowardly become courageous, the crooked branch becomes straight, the acrid and bitter fruit of the mountains and woods becomes sweet and succulent, and the 5-petaled flowers put forth 100 petals. So through grafting, you can make sour lemon to give sweet orange fruit. So basis of all the trees that grow in Florida is actually sour lime or lemon. Okay, any comments?
Just some clarification. So when we're talking about education, there are two kinds of knowledge, actually, ifon and ilm. So, you know, if we're talking about education, we would be speaking about then education from divine educators, because you've just been talking about Islam and Muhammad and so on, and what happened in terms of that transformation. Because every time a divine messenger comes, they come to the most unholy, godless type places to enact a transformation on that population, you know. So part of the proof, I would say, of the fruit of the revelation of each manifestation is the people that they come to, who are at the lowest ebb, and that transformative process through their revelation and their teachings transforms those societies, and that becomes very manifest for everybody to see. So, you know, my point is that for me, when this is talking about education, it is, you know, of course, going to school and material education, but that doesn't necessarily transform people's spirits and hearts and their reality to manifest fruits of education in the, you know, in the collective sense of humanity. So I think that when we're talking about education, we're talking about two kinds. We're talking about, you know, material education and spiritual education. Both are important, but spiritual education is the significant difference that can bring forth fruit, like civilizations that reach their peak, so to speak. Thank you.
Sure. But you have to realize, you have to separate Islam from Muslims. You see?
I have a concern about
you have to separate revelation from the Islamic religion or its branches. These are two separate events. One is
I want to ask a question about that, if you may. I know you want to create a distinction, and it's very important. I do want to ask, while you're providing your answer, if you could also consider this, the fact that there's this idea of spiritual education and material education. You have this understanding that many people have in society, perhaps even about Muslims, as you see in Muslim countries today, where typically you'll find theocracies where the belief is that all the education is spiritual education that's being provided. And of course, a lot of people in the West don't find that to be very appealing to have spiritual education. So I'm thinking that maybe we could some clarification is in order to help us understand what we mean by spiritual education, as opposed to how a lot of people believe it is practiced today, which Baha'is don't at all, should not be practicing.
First of all, the reality of it is that we call it progressive revelation. That means that the interpretation of the book of Moses terminated the interpretation, not laws of Moses, the interpretation of laws of Moses that created the Judaic culture terminates when Jesus comes. That means that if you try to apply those laws the way it was written when Jesus came in, you're going to cause harm. Although before Advent of the manifestation, before Jesus, those laws, the proper interpretation of those laws were just, but it degraded to a degree that the religion of Judaic religion was causing harm to the society, to the inherent of the religion. So you have to separate where the religion turns into culture when the new manifestation comes in. So no longer, for example, when Muhammad came in, the interpretation of the Bible as it stands from perspective of the literal translation is terminated. You cannot apply those laws anymore because the new laws are coming in, and those new laws would create the next jump in civilization. Ironically, this doesn't mean that those new manifestation laws have their own period of flourishing and application before humanity get hold of it and alters it to their benefit. The minute the ecclesiastical structure changes, the words are the same, but the interpretation of it is changed, then the religions start to go astray. Not the original book, Revelation, which was valid. So Islamic doctrine, from its appearance in the 7th century, was 620 when it came in AD, to 11th century, was creating a jump in civilization no one was heard of. You know, the algebra was invented, many different diseases, and many scientists flourished in that process because Muhammad abolished the caste system that existed at the time. Now, when you go further, during the same period, Europe was in dark ages. Christianity was in the most dark ages, the wars and killings and this Inquisition and all those atrocities that the clergy was perpetrating in the name of Jesus was keeping the Europe down in dark ages. Now, when you come a little bit forward in mid-1800, the minute the revelation of Bob occurred, that shows termination of the Holy Spirit from Quran. That means that the interpretation of the Quran, true interpretations, are in the hands of the Bab, not the ecclesiastical structure that created the culture of Islamic culture, that was dilapidated to a point that was causing harm to the society. And we see that harm today. If you look at the Palestine today, in the strip of Gaza, or Gaza, they call it, they teach children how to kill Jews, that they're like pigs. Now, ironically, this interpretation is false and is man-made. When you read the Holy Book, or for example, the Muhammad killed 800 infidels with his own hand. In reality, the same law that Muhammad applied at that time, right, we apply today in modern warfare. That means that if you have a group of your allies turning against you and sell or go against you in a covert operation and give your information, war information, to your adversaries, obviously they get executed. This happened today. But now, guess what happens? Those people, ecclesiastical structure today in the Islamic religion, in that part of the world, take the same concept and say they don't describe the predicate. They describe the actual action, that Muhammad killed 800 infidel women, children, and adults. But in reality, the same law exists in modern armies today. So the question really is, now, why? Now you see that Islam that is taught today is not the interpretation of the Holy Spirit, which is Quran. It's a false interpretation of that. So it is a difference between what revelation was and what is practiced today. And you can see clearly the harm that is caused, because generation of people that are taught in the school of that area, they were phoning their parents when they attacked Israel and took hostages and killed women, children. They beheaded children, infants even. And of course, they don't want to graphically show all these things. Was because they were reading the interpretation of Quran that they were taught. So they become, as Baha'u'llah mentioned in Iran, they become zombies that are controlled by the ecclesiastical structure to cause harm in the name of God. So you see how effective the education is, the moral standard that existed. So another good anecdotal thing is that one of the generals of Muhammad goes to him and said, look, my wife is actually belong to the tribe that we're in war with. And she is interfering with my actions in the army, and she is telling me to do stuff which is opposite of what I should do. So Muhammad tells him, whatever your wife say, do the opposite, right? And this is in a hadith. So when you look at, you go into the Islamic culture today, they say you shouldn't rely on your wife's suggestions. And Muhammad said, whatever your wife says, do the opposite. Obviously, this is not true. So when you eliminate the predicate, you can take the same word that was valid at the time in the condition that was occurring, that was valid. You cannot extrapolate that no husband should do whatever their wife says, and you should do opposite. So you see, these are anecdotal, but when the religion, which is man-made interpretation, which is called religion, subject to laws of entropy, thermodynamics, that means that it deteriorates as time goes by, and it gets altered with the hands of humans to take it to their advantage to justify atrocities that they want to perform. So why are they disintegrating? They're damaging themselves, they're damaging their religion, they're damaging the society, because now those laws are abrogated. When Baha'u'llah came in, you can no longer differentiate between infidel and a person that is adherent to the Baha'i religion. You're not judged. So there is no such a thing as infidel in Baha'i religion. There is no such a thing as clean or unclean. Everything that God created is clean. So when you try to apply those laws that existed for sake of humanity that was altered by ecclesiastical structure, no longer is valid. And now you see it, application of it is causing harm. When somebody is sitting in their pulpit in the middle of Rome and issues a fatwa that Salman Rushdie should be executed because he insulted Muhammad, that means that he spoke with the voice of God to the adherent, where Baha'u'llah came in and say, there is no ecclesiastical structure. There is no one that can issue fatwas. So if a person adapts the culture, Islamic culture, they're going to go astray. And by the way, majority of them don't. That means they don't follow doctrine of their clergy. Otherwise, we would have chaos in the world. So as you see, you have to segregate the religion that turns into culture and usually is directed through the ecclesiastical structure, which Baha'u'llah abolished. Now, when you violate the laws of God or efficient cause, you have to be punished with your own hand. And they are getting punished. They're getting destroyed. Tens of thousands of people are dying because they executed unjustly a law that existed in their book that they were taught for decades as children. They tried to exercise it and cause close to probably 50,000 people died and maimed because of the action that they did. And they don't know what came to them. Why God's forsaken them? They're the one that are forsaking themselves because they're not adopting or accepting the Holy Spirit, the revelation of God for today. And they get punished by their hands. So does the Western society. We drink, we have alcohol, and we pay for it. 40,000 people die every year in the United States. This is for Vietnam War is occurring every year in the United States. Nobody says anything. So this is not as apparent. When you're violating Holy Spirit, you pay the price. It's just built in laws of God that has to be executed. When you allow abortion as a convenience, which is common in the whole world, Western world. What's the outcome? The outcome is that their race is getting wiped out. They say white Russians are going to get wiped out within 30 years because the white Russians childs per couple is 1.2. It has to be 2.1 to sustain itself. So when you have 1.2, that means within 30 years, you're going to get wiped out. Same thing is happening in China. Same thing is happening in Europe, France, Germany. Germany is in bad shape. It's happening in Japan. The population is aging. People don't get married. They don't have children because they see this as a burden. This is what happens with the secular society that see bearing children as a cost, as a sacrifice of their personal space. So what happens? The consequences are that your society gets demolished. Maybe not in one generation, but second generation. After Second World War, Germany massively imported Muslim Turks because they didn't have labor to run their factories. And their childbearing couples, they're not at the rate of replacing their own population. So you see, when the new manifestation comes in, it abrogates all the laws that existed in previous religion, is abolished, terminated. And the new laws are coming in. You want to keep your ecclesiastical system, then you pay the price for it. You use laws that are abrogated regarding infidel, you pay for it. And you see this across the world. And there is no alternative to it. They cannot escape it. Eventually, the pain is going to be so deep that they would start examining. A good example of it is Iran today. They thought by reinforcing Islamic culture through the ecclesiastical structure, which is the strongest party in Iran, and anyone that disagreed with them, they either jailed or executed. So everybody is domesticated right now. But what they did, they completely destroyed Shia Islam in Iran. Now, this was prophesied by Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha, that Islam would disappear to a degree, not Islam, Holy Spirit, not Quran itself, but adherents of this Islam in the future, you have to go to the library to find them. There wouldn't be any single Muslim left in the future in the world. But you still can find Christians, by the way. That's Shoghi Effendi mentioned that, because Christianity reformed itself and it separated church from state the way, and abolished slavery and accepted other religions. If you look at the Pope, the last two popes, they started to apply Baha'i doctrine, that there is no heaven and hell, physical heaven and hell. There is no bottomless pit. You're talking about Pope, head of the 1.2 billion Catholics, was coming close to the Baha'i doctrine. Because their adherents, if they didn't, they would lose their adherence. So this is really the scope of how the religion falls when the humanity interfere with the true interpretation of it. I guess we have come to the end of this session. Any other comments on this before we do the closing?
Yes,
statement?
I have to say what a terribly interesting program it was tonight. It was just wonderful. Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
And I have 3 responses to factualize this in terms of the stats on Islam. Actually, I have sent a stat graph showing how many, there's 2 billion so-called Muslims, and I don't want to get in, I'm separating the Quran and the spiritual inheritance given to us through the Quram al-Asma from the Bab, thank God, because Mullah Hussein accepted the revelation of the Bab, and we wouldn't be here without that. And the second thing is that is the International Court of Justice wrong when it has given the edict that Israel is committing genocide? Now, is that not a fact? Is that wrong? And the other thing, you know, like I have facts for this and I haven't got time here to share them, but I think it would be good to do some current research. Islam is the fastest growing religion other than Christianity. It's the biggest religion globally. In Iran, yes, because of what they're doing there. But in other parts of the world, Islam is one of the fastest growing religions, and possibly because they have a lot of children. Check it for yourself. It's in the stats. My point is we need to be very careful and very factual that we differentiate between global justice systems and our own interpretation of our own biases and prejudices. Respectfully, sir. Thank you.
Well, sure. I just want to mention something quite interesting. When you're looking at the growth of Islam, these are growth of Muslims that are born to an Islamic family. This doesn't mean that they practice Islam. The growth is correct because they have more children. But Islam doctrine, which the center of Islam is in Mecca, is in Saudi Arabia. They just, about a few months ago, they actually made alcohol halal. This is the center of the Sunni Muslim in the world. They created that the below 40 proof alcohol is halal now.
Well, if Gilbert, if the good Lord looked at the world today and said, who are the saints and who are the sinners? I think there'd be a very fine dividing line between those things. I attend these sessions to find facts and to be fair and just in my consultation with people in this forum. When you say that the people in Gaza, the children in Gaza are being taught to kill Israeli soldiers, please. Half the world has been watching day to day on their phone about the atrocities being committed against babies. I don't care what religion they are. Nobody does that to children in my life. Nobody starves children to death because they have some kind of thing. If the International Court of Justice has announced ethnic cleansing and genocide, then that to me is far more legal than any bias and prejudice that has been presented. We have to be very careful when we are saying these things. You have
to be very careful. What we were discussing is an area which both parties are violating the Baha'i religion, not one side.
I don't care who's doing what. I care as a woman that babies and children are innocently being slaughtered by the thousands as their parents, and they run to get food. And if the International Court of Justice has told us it is ethnic cleansing and genocide legally, I am on that side of the innocent children, Gilbert. It's shocking. Shocking.
No, I understand. I do agree. We're not defending one versus the other, or the actions that are being performed is justified because of the atrocities the other party committed. both are wrong and 100% you're correct. But reality is no one wants to live near a mass murderer as their neighbor. This is the problem.
This is all propaganda. And the point is, I am ashamed. The blessed beauty, the shrine of the Bab is in Israel. God bless those particular spots. Blessed are those spots because they're the only blessed spots there at the moment. Yah-Baha'u'llah, and God bless all the innocent children and all this propaganda rubbish. Rubbish, all of it. Rubbish.
Well, it is good for you to actually, the son of one of the heads of Gaza defected, and it's describing how they put him in the education that I just described to you. This is it's a known fact that how they educate their children to create that environment to control. And this is exactly written in Iran, that Abdu'l-Baha mentions that this clergy creates zombies that would act regardless of how much atrocities they commit. But reality doesn't change, that those events are occurring. And obviously, both sides of equation are in error. They're committing atrocities and they're paying for the pain. If you look at the Israeli side, over 1,100 of their soldiers died in this skirmish that they did into Gaza. About 1,200 of them were either captured or took as hostage or killed by those people. So when you're looking at the
Gilbert, I'm not interested. I am a victim of colonial settlement, and we have thousands of Indigenous people that know exactly what's going on there. We're not stupid. You can't, brainwash people like myself that has watched generation after generation because of money and greed and politics. That's and correct. Killing innocent babies. I don't care whose babies they are. All children are our sacred trust. I don't care what color they are. And if you look at the undermining factor here, it is, as the blessed beauty has forbidden us, is racism, nationalism, and communism. And those false gods are taking various forms and influencing people. Look, we are human beings. I don't care who these people are.
Of course, but remember...
when the Holocaust happened, we said never again. And what are we doing?
It's shocking. I've been...
Excuse me, I have a comment.
Yes,
excuse me, I have a comment. I'm hearing what Sharon's saying, and I'm hearing what Gilbert, you're saying it. There is no this or, there's no or. What we are seeing, what is happening there, and the way the children and also the women are being tortured and be killed. There's no question, no question. Anybody look at that scenes, anybody see those kids, 3 years old, 4 years old, holding the hands of their moms, or a 6 years old holding the hands of their brother, sister, 3 years old, and going for food. There's no question that what we are seeing is not okay. There's no question. By the same time, when they attack the Israelis in that, and it also killed the kids, and the mother with 2 kids was kidnapped. No question. It is so obvious. None of them is right. That one is not right. What we are seeing is not right. Regardless of, I don't think I don't think that they created all those children or educate them to be against the Israelis and become a terrorist. So there's no question about it. If they have done it, is a few. But the way we see it, how many thousand are dying, children's, infant, it's just unbelievable. I mean, I cannot even, I don't have any attachment to any of those. But none of them, the other one, so it doesn't make it right. None of them
We
is
agree.
right.
We all agree.
Yeah,
All I
none of
just
them is
wanted
right.
to present is that
Mhm.
both sides of the conflict are wrong and they're violating the latest manifestations of God. And that's the reason this is happening to them. It's not because one side is in the right or the other one is not. But the combination of violation of the Holy Spirit has no other alternative except the outcome that you see.
But the other
I
thing
understand it.
is
I'm sorry, Mary.
it's
And,
yes, look, it's
Sharon,
in the
just one
Holy
second.
Land. This is, this is our sacred spot. There is the shrine of the utmost beauty and Baji and our holy places. In the middle of it, right in the view of it, the plains of Sharon and Carmel, right in the middle of it, is the most horrendous act against the Holy Spirit. It is very, very hard to watch in such a sacred place that so much blood, killing, murder, savagery. You talk about savagery. Is going on. It is wrong. It is horrendous, and law must be upheld for everybody. It's not wrong and right. It's a question of our common humanity. No woman or man, I don't care what culture, religion a person is, goes about and massacres and starves children to death. And this is a 75-year-old, a colonial project and occupation, and it is political. It has got nothing to do with my Jewish whānau and very little to do with the reality of the Quran. It is a basest thing we are ever going to see human nature at its lowest ebb. Yeah, prayers to everybody today. I'm over it.
I assure you, just go and read some writings about brainwashing. Then you get
Gilbert. Gilbert, I've researched this and I have been on forums, and I know that even Israeli soldiers are brainwashed right from school, and then the other side is brainwashed right from school, and you have this hatred permeating and killing innocent babies.
To tell you the truth, to show you how this atrocity started, when they were catching some of those people that invaded Israel and took people hostage, they were all basically given speed. They were giving narcotics to do those things, and they told them what to do. They were all high. No human being would go and decapitate another child, but they did, because they were under the influence that their political and ecclesiastical structure planned this and executed.
This is all political, and it has nothing to do with Orthodox Judaism, and it has nothing to do with the perfection and the Quran al-Asma and the divine Joseph of the Quran. It is an aberration against every single human things that make us human, and it is 75 years old.
I know about my own countries, right? When in 1957, Islamic culture, Shiites took over, they erased all the books. They erased history of Iran. They said the Iran, prior to Islam, there was no culture in Iran. The male would marry their own children. They created such a brainwash. Now, fortunately, we had internet, and people were going home to their parents and say, where did we come from before Islam? They erased it because they were brainwashing. That's the culture that existed. Even during my time.
At this point in time, Baha'u'llah said that this, this is the time of the time. This is coming up to the phase where either humanity gets its head on, or like this affects each and every one of us. We've just had 3 people from my country imprisoned in Israel for trying to give food to children, and every other country have people who are being tortured and on hunger things in Israel, in prisons, waiting to be released. 40 countries across the world. This is not something that is not going to affect each and every soul. And unfortunately, all of us are affected. All of us, because this is what the world is like today. And these calamities that are coming and we're living through are going to test us. And my point is, I attend your sessions every time because I'm not giving up on you. I'm not giving up on the greatness of your spiritual station and your vanguard. I am there for you. Even if you loathe me, I'm going to stand. Because this faith has to be
information, we have installation in Israel, and I have contact with the head of the hospitals there. And when we talk to the majority of the Israelites, Jewish people, are against the war also. This had nothing to do with the process.
It's political, because look, Jewish scholars all over the world are writing apologies. They're absolutely horrified. We're talking about a group of people. We're talking about a settler colonial project. It's all about land. It's about power. It's a power thing. And the myriad are the victims. That's the point. We are not on diverse side. It's just I am so tired of not being able to help those children get food, for God's sake.
Hopefully it looks like it's ending anyways with the initiative that the United States has done. It looks like we're getting to an end of conflict soon, within next.
Well, I hate to disavow you of that. It isn't going. They're not going to stop until every single Palestinian person residing there is gone. I'm sorry. I would love to believe that. I would love to believe that. But 200 years of colonization. I know what it's about. Trust me, I pray that there is a good outcome, but I am very, very, no, I don't think so.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Calvin, I'm thinking that there is a statement from Baha'u'llah. He said, "Let your vision be world embracing." That's right. Let your vision be world embracing. This kind of the atrocities is happening all over the world. It's happening in Iran. Afghanistan women are really under lots of harm. Pakistan and Ukraine, Russia, China, happening all over the world.
It is.
So that's why Baha'u'llah said, let your vision be world embracing. So when your vision is focused on one part of the world, and then you put all your energies and everything that one, then make you exhausted. Then you will be far away from what Baha'u'llah asks you, or what Universal asks you as in this moment to do it. I think one of the major the responsibility for Baha'is is that to teach the faith. When you rise to serve the faith, to teach the faith, you're solving all this problem. But if you put your energies and anger, each one of us, to all this small portion of the world which is happening, then we cannot be able to concentrate and spend our time and energy to teach the faith or follow the universal justice. At the present, doesn't matter what I do, this kind of things happening. It's almost like a huge storm is coming in the ocean, and I'm trying to stop it. And I cannot stop it, I get angry. But the storm is coming. This storm is part of the God's plan, has to happen.
Of course.
And it happened all over the Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, or every country you go.
Africa.
And who's the economy?
Lebanon, Syria, you name it. Everywhere.
The economy is really crushing the whole world. Everybody are worried that about the everything getting more expensive. You're worried about the future of the children, about the world, worried about drugs. All these things happening is like a huge flood is coming. If I want to stand in front of it and get angry and say, my God, all these things are really crushing us, it's just how much energy I have. Each one of us, we have limited energy and limited time in this world. And if we spend our energy and time for something that we cannot do anything.
Sorry, but I just think that this is the first time that voicing these, and I understand what Baha'u'llah says. I know what we have to do. So most of our life is spent on the ground, at the grassroots, in our communities, in our neighborhoods. I get that. And it isn't anger. What I feel is absolute sorrow to have to witness it.
Of course.
Absolutely. You know, I can't dismiss limbless children and whatever else. I'm not meant to, but I am meant to channel that into, you know, being more courageous and saying to people, well, look, you know, this is something we have to implement. So thank you very much, all of you, for your patience.
I think Jiva had raised. But again, what we're trying to do is generally, obviously, we have to refute any atrocity against anyone. They are all citizens of the world, regardless of what religion or political affiliation they have. So our job is to stop wars and make sure that humanity lives in harmony. And that's the goal of the Baha'i religion in general. And as was mentioned, even you look at atrocities that is occurring in Myanmar, they're genocide, they're killing Muslims and sending them to Bangladesh or India. So
look what I've got, Gilbert. I've got the promise of world peace from the Universal
right.
House of Justice, you know. So after I get off here, I'm going to sort of hold it very close to my heart and say, please, God, please, God. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I think let's close in a positive note, and someone reads the closing prayers. You have to unmute yourself, Sharon.
Mr. Hakeem, before we say a prayer, there is something that I would wish to refer everyone to that can help understand a little bit about the Baha'i position. There's a book written called Century of Light. It is published recently. It has quite an extensive description of this past century, the 1900s, the options that humanity had before it, as we've somewhat discussed some of those decisions that humanity has made in spite of a solution to create a peaceful world, one that is moral, one that is just. There's this quote from the House of Justice quoting Shoyi Effendi. Lest any observer of the cause be tempted to misunderstand such warnings as only metaphorical, Shoyi Effendi, drawing some of the historical implications, wrote in 1941, a tempest, unprecedented in its violence, unpredictable in its course, catastrophic in its immediate effects, unimaginably glorious in its ultimate consequences, is at present sweeping the face of the earth. Its driving power is remorselessly gaining in range and momentum. Its cleansing force, however much undetected, is increasing with every passing day. Humanity, gripped in the clutches of its devastating power, is smitten by the evidences of its resistless fury. It can neither perceive its origin, nor probe its significance, nor discern its outcome. Bewildered, agonized, and helpless, it watches this great and mighty wind of God invading the remotest and fairest regions of the earth, rocking its foundations, deranging its equilibrium, sundering its nations, disrupting the homes of its peoples, wasting its cities, driving into exile its kings, pulling down its bulwarks, uprooting its institutions, dimming its light, and harrowing up the souls of its inhabitants. For those who have not read Century of Light, this was a citation from Shoghi Effendi, The Promised Day is Come. So that is another read that if you've been lit afire by this conversation, you best read as well. So we are ready for that closing prayer. And remember, everyone, all of these discussions that we had, these are personal opinions of individuals. The official position of the Baha'i faith can be found in the Baha'i writings. As you've just read from Century of Light, or you just heard rather, as I've read from Century of Light, there's quite a bit in the Baha'i writings itself, far more expansive in its reach, and very damning in its consequences, as we've just read. So we have that closing prayer ready? Thumbs up?
We do.
Lovely.
Heroes are they, O my Lord. Thou seest me, O my God, bow down in lowliness, humbling myself before thy commandments, submitting to thy sovereignty, trembling at the might of thy dominion, fleeing from thy wrath, entreating thy grace, relying upon thy forgiveness, shaking with awe at thy fury. I implore thee with a throbbing heart, with streaming tears and a yearning soul, and in complete detachment from all things, to make thy lovers as rays of light across thy realms, and to aid thy chosen servants to exalt thy word, that their faces may turn beauteous and bright with splendor, that their hearts may be filled with mysteries, and that every soul may lay down its burden of sin. Guard them from the aggressor, from him whom thou hast become a shameless and blasphemous doer of wrong. Verily, thy lovers thirst, O my Lord. Lead them to the wellspring of bounty and grace. Verily, they hunger. Send down upon them thy heavenly table. Verily, they are naked. Robe them in the garments of learning and knowledge. Heroes are they, O my Lord. Lead them to the field of battle. Guides are they. Make them to speak out with arguments and proofs. Ministering servants are they. Cause them to pass round the cup that brimmeth with the wine of certitude. O my God, make them to be songsters that carol in fair gardens. Make them lions that crouch in the thickets, whales that plunge in the vast deep. Verily, thou art he of abounding grace. There is none other God save thee, the mighty, the powerful, the ever bestowing. Ya Baha'u'llah, Ya Baha'u'llah, Ya Baha'u'llah. Blessings.
Thank you very much. This concludes this session, and hopefully we see everyone next week, same time. Have a good night.